Hi, welcome to our live viewers. This is a Polite Society podcast. We are recording our live 261 episode. I want to thank our sponsors, ABN Army Surplus, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, and of course, Firearm Safety Institute. Without them, we wouldn't be here, so please go give them a visit. Links to all of them are in our show notes, which always go up on politesocietypodcast.com or politicsandguns.com. Also, you can at any time you can enter the Q&A app on Google Plus and ask us a question. We'll answer it live on the air. We're getting ready to go here. We'll be doing our intro and getting into the show here in just a second. Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to change that right now. Thank you, Susan. Okay, go ahead and refresh your page. There we go, we're live. You got a nasty blur on your face. Nothing I can do about it. It's from the window. No, I can't get to it.
What's that?
Susan says I have a wicked glare on my face. And
Tell the makeup girl to fix that, will you?
I'm telling you. She's asking if I want to close the curtain beside me. There's my sweetheart. Hi. And I'm like, no, I'm kind of blocked in. I can't get to it.
Hey, John? I guess not.
I don't know.
Quick level. So.
Better.
Gary Doherty, have you got your microphone situation made up yet?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Hey,
I
John.
can hear you, John.
Yeah,
Gary,
I think I self-muted myself. Belly muted.
Ah.
All right.
Is that like butt dialing?
Kind of. I have a mute button on the headset.
Okay. Gary, you're still a little low, man.
Okay.
There we go.
That's good?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
I think for the open, because we don't have Rachel back, I'm just going to switch this to Gary.
Okay.
Let me get the notes up. Hold on.
Let me see if I can get us a gun quote.
Gary, I very much apologize. How do you spell your last name again, man?
Daugherty.
Got it.
I like this quote. In a perfect world, you wouldn't need guns. This is not a perfect world. Sheriff Ben Johnson, Volusia County, Florida?
Volusia.
Volusia?
Well, I can't turn the screen for the laptop off. I'm using that for show notes.
Do we have any interviews? Or
Yeah, Kyle.
okay.
That's way too much. Ooh. Let's try
gotcha.
turning. Let's try turning this light on, sweetheart. I mean, if my audience needs to, get their beauty time with my face.
Gary,
Yeah.
you dropped me a message on Facebook. I assume that was in reply to when I asked you about interviewing some students.
Yeah. So far, I can't believe.
Yeah, everybody says no, huh?
Yeah, I'm actually stunned. I went to the first three people that are very vocal, and I thought, oh, these guys would be great. They'd love to post a lot on Facebook and stuff, and I'm busy and a couple of no's, and I was just stunned.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
maybe you'll have to just mention it as part of your class.
I'm kind of in the dark here. What?
Paul, I thought it would be. I want another million concealed carry holders. I thought it would be interesting to interview. I'll call them students. They're not people who have been carrying for about a month, because it's fresh in their mind how they learned, what they feared, how the experience went.
And yes, and the like a month after they start carrying daily. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's still new enough that, oh my God, am I printing? Oh.
Right. They still think the gun makes their ass look big. They still think everybody is staring at their hip.
Yeah.
And they're just going through that. Oh, I was about to walk into the bar and I went, oh, interesting sign they have next to the door. I forgot about that. All that sort of shit.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
I thought it was a great idea. I can't believe that I'm falling on deaf ears here, but we'll keep plugging away.
Well, Rachel hasn't helped me. Oh, come on. Who am I thinking of? Andrew Rothman hasn't helped me. Dave Cole, Ken Blanchard. Everybody's pulling up empty on me.
Huh.
If my state actually issued permits, I would gladly help you out.
But where do you live, Kyle?
The little state of Rhode Island.
Ah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
You going to stay there? You have reason to stay?
I have reason to stay. I got friends and family, obviously. Really, the biggest thing keeping me here is my martial arts training. That's honestly the biggest thing.
Do you receive it or give it?
Do I receive martial arts training?
Yeah, or is that what you do, or?
No, well, it's I receive training. Like, I'm a student.
Okay.
But you're always a student. But no, it's just it's one of those things that you're in for the long haul kind of deal. But if I were to tell them, hey, I can't deal with this crap anymore. I can't stand the winters. I can't stand the politics. I can't stand the people. I'm moving. He'd be completely like, oh, dude, I'd go with you, but my wife would not let me. But.
So is Rhode Island worse than Connecticut and Massachusetts?
Hang on. Let's do this live, guys.
Okay.
I love that line of questioning, but let's do it live.
Gotcha.
Let's kick off into this open. We ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Here we go. Coming back in 5. Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, recorded live on Saturdays, August 16th, 2014. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Gary Doherty, and we have Kyle Bacon of the Search and Assess podcast with us tonight.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about self-defense news.
I'm Rob Morse, and we have our weekly stories of defensive gun use.
So, climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 261 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and welcome back. This is our personal news segment. I'll go ahead and lead things off this week. I have to apologize to everybody. I took Sunday off. We recorded Saturday night, and Sunday I got up and I didn't want to edit right away, and so I sat down and I started watching a little bit of Netflix. And I was kind of bouncing around and found a show I was like really getting into, and so I binge watched 2 seasons. And before I knew it, it was time to go to bed. I had not edited yet, and I thought, well, this is no big deal. Not a big deal. I'll just take the laptop with me on the truck. I'll get time Monday night or Tuesday night or maybe Wednesday morning. I'll edit the show and get it put up. And then when I got out to my truck Monday morning, there was this huge lake of antifreeze under the truck again. So I had to get a loaner truck, which did not have AC power. I brought along a little inverter out of my regular truck, but it wasn't powerful enough to power the laptop I used to edit with, and so I had no way to edit the show. So the show that was supposed to go out Wednesday went out this morning, and the one that everybody recorded on Wednesday will go out probably Monday morning. The show we're recording right now will go out on the regular Wednesday morning because I will have it edited tomorrow. My wife is across the desk going, "Oh yes, you will." So that's what's going on with me. Nothing gun related other than a little bit of dry practice this morning. Next face I have down on my list of faces on the bottom of the screen, Gary Doherty joining us tonight. Gary, what have you been up to since the last time you were on the air, man?
Taught a class today. Another Illinois concealed carry class. Obviously available only to Illinois residents and those of only 4 other states so far. We're still working on you, Paul.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Just a lot of couple of new students who have never shot before, so I'm looking forward to getting them up to speed on all the gun safety and gun shooting activities.
Yeah. Now we're just a little bit more than a month away from Gun Rights Policy Conference right in your backyard. You getting excited for that, man?
I am actually very excited for it. A good friend of mine, Paul Lathrop, told me that that's the one event he wouldn't miss, and I've never been, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, I missed it last year, and I never, ever will again. Ever, ever. So next on my list of faces down here, John, what have you been up to, man?
Well, in gun-related news, I picked up my new-to-me Ruger Security 6 revolver. I had won it in an auction. I picked it up Monday, and it's a 2 3/4 inch stainless 357 Magnum. Has nice checkered hardwood grips. Now I just have to find a nice holster for it.
2 3/4 inch 357 Magnum that you're going to only shoot 38 special out of, right?
Well, maybe not. It's a Ruger. It's not a lightweight.
Okay, all right.
It was the predecessor to the Ruger GP100. So it's got some heft to it.
Yeah. That's what my girlfriend shoots. The GP.
Okay. Anything else going on, or?
No, working hard.
Yeah. Now, in your work, is that do you have a seasonal busy season, or is it just when it's busy, when it's not, it's not?
I don't normally have a seasonal busy season, except one of the hospitals I used to do the retirement plan for got bought out. So all these people can move their money out of the retirement plan, and I'm trying to get them to move it to me, which means substantial monies.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Well, next on my list of faces down here is Rob. Rob, what's been up with you, man?
Let's see. Some dry fire practice, and I made an appointment to go see an old instructor I'd studied with before, just to review some training. I know how to instruct. I'm not instructing enough to stay current. So I asked him for some, really review courses. How do I stay sharp unless I'm sitting in the back of a classroom either teaching or watching somebody else teach?
Cool. Very cool. And then joining us as kind of a guest host, Kyle Bacon of Search and Assess Podcast is with us, and he's been on the show. You've heard his voice here before. What's been up with you recently, Kyle?
Well, it's good to be back on the Polite Society podcast. Thank you for having me, guys. Haven't really been up to too much. I can't say that. I just started an adventure of reloading 223. I'm brand new to reloading, and I hear it's a pretty ambitious round to kind of get your hands dirty with. But hey, if you're gonna learn, you might as well jump on the deep end and just start kicking. So that's been kind of interesting, figuring out how to the order in which to start your prepping your brass and whatnot. So it's been an interesting learning process. I will say that. Other than that, nothing much. Nothing's really new on the horizon.
So with your reloading, did you start off with a single stage press, or did you go right off into the deep end and go with the big bucks and get a multi-stage press?
Well, I went for the Dillon 550. So it's I heard stick with a single stage, but don't go with something above the 550 if you're gonna invest your money in something that you want long term. You might as well get something that is useful and is constantly used by people who have been reloading for a long period of time. So I figured it's going to be an investment, and I got it at the time during the Sandy Hook scare when you couldn't find 223. So that's what prompted me to get into it, and I'm only just now starting to actually put all of these things that I've invested my time and money into actual practice. So.
Okay. So are you enjoying the reloading, or do you find it I know a lot of people that reload that find it relaxing. Is that the case for you?
Well, once I get everything going, I think it's going to be relaxing. I just started the process of prepping the brass and everything. I haven't even moved into your powder charges and seating the bullet or anything. I just started doing the depriming process and tumbling and trimming the case and getting the crimp out of the primer pocket and all that stuff. And I will say that the depriming process was it was interesting. I had forgotten to lubricate my brass beforehand, and I had a piece of brass stuck inside the die, so that involved me taking apart the die, banging it out with a hammer. I reset the whole thing back up again, lubricated my brass, and then the little metal rod that goes through the middle of the die that pushes out your spent primer got caught on the edge of the brass and bent in like a 30-degree angle. So it was a little it wore on my patience a little bit, but as things have been going along, things have been all the kinks have been getting worked out. So it's a learning process like anything else, but once you get going, it is pretty relaxing, I will say that.
Sure. Well, let's do this, guys. We've got a huge news segment to do, so matter of fact, we're probably going to have to bust it up into a couple segments. So let's go ahead and take a break here, and when we come back, we'll get into news. Hang on everybody right back right after this. I got to save this just a second.
Was it mentioned why we're not at ABN today?
No, I haven't heard.
Oh.
I don't know why we're not at ABN.
We're not at ABN because Gary's not at ABN, and I'm debating on if ABN's going to remain a sponsor or not.
Okay.
ABN hasn't paid their bill in a couple months, and I'm getting tired of Gary's crap.
That just went out on YouTube, right?
Oh, you know what? It sure did. Do I care?
That's a question you don't have to answer because, like it or not, it went out on YouTube.
Okay, let me go back over to news. Reminder to our live viewers that you can hit the Q&A app and ask us questions. We'll answer them. We'll answer them live on the air. And I need another drink of my beer. You all mind if I bring us in and go right into my diatribe?
Go right ahead.
After you.
All right, here we go. Coming back in 5. Hey, and welcome back. This is our news segment, and tonight I want to talk a bit about 2 stories that seem extremely dissimilar. However, I promise I'm going to tie them together at the end, so just bear with me a little bit. Many of you know that I am a NASCAR fan. Last weekend, right about the time we were wrapping up recording the weekend show, there was a horrible accident at a racetrack in rural upstate New York. A young race car driver was killed in that accident. Now, not to sound crass, but this is something that happens about once a month during racing season somewhere in the United States or Canada. Racing is a dangerous sport by its very nature. Sometimes racers, unfortunately, give their lives in pursuit of the sport that they love. Now, 2 things are a little bit unusual about this incident. First is that the young man who died, and the young man's name, he was 20 years old, his name's Kevin Ward, he got out of his race car and was walking on the track. Second thing that was unique about this is the car that hit Kevin Ward was driven by 3-time NASCAR champion Tony Stewart, a very well-known racer. Well, the media climbed all over this and was all but calling Tony Stewart a murderer. Now, video of the wreck played over and over and over on ESPN showing. Now, this is extremely poor taste in my opinion. It showed this kid dying. Even sports media was they were all over it trying to paint Tony Stewart as the bad guy. And what really wasn't right about all this is this incident truly was an accident. If you were to watch the video of the incident, what you see is this young race car driver is clearly upset. He gets out of his race car that had just spun out, and he approaches oncoming traffic from the right side. This happened on the back stretch, and as he's walking on the right side of the vehicles, towards the vehicles. Now, these are sprint cars. Now, on a sprint car, you've got great visibility to your left. You got really good visibility ahead of you. Because of the way the wing is set up, you can't see a damn thing out the right side of the car. There's no way Tony Stewart could have seen this kid walking towards him, actually running towards him. So it was an accident. And Tony Stewart, again, like I said, had no way of seeing him. But in all but the media that is dedicated to racing itself, Tony Stewart was just ripped apart. A small group of media that covers racing full time and actually knows a little bit about racing and knows anything at all about sprint car racing did jump in and try and explain what happened and try to explain when they were able to get airtime with the with the Good Morning Americas, with Fox News, with the big time TV networks, when they actually did interview somebody that was connected to racing media, they tried to explain what happened. But that's not what the media was interested in reporting.
Right.
So it was just, honestly, it was like the media smelled blood in the water, and it was just, it's time to attack. So I can hear our listeners now. How does this relate to anything we talk about on the podcast on a regular basis? Well, about that same time, again, as we were wrapping up the weekend show, news started breaking about an incident in Ferguson, Missouri. Now, in this particular event, 2 young males walked into a convenience store and committed strong-arm robbery. They stole about $50 in cigars and assaulted a clerk. When a police officer contacted the 2 males, there was a struggle. At least one shot was fired from inside a police car, and the police officer, one of the 2 young men died. Now, in this example, again, there were a couple things that made this story really, quote unquote, newsworthy. First, there were a couple witnesses that claimed that the young man had his hands up, and second, because the police force is a majority Caucasian force, and the young male was a young black man, it made it an easy story to insert race into. Now, as I was driving around this week, I listened to reports of both incidents on satellite radio. The initial reports of the Ferguson story stated that when the officer, who has been named by the police department, but out of respect for that officer, we're not going to name him on this show. He's had death threats, and I know we're not a huge media outlet, but we're going to do our best to keep that officer anonymous on our end. But anyway, that officer has been named, and he approached 2 young men, attempted to get out of his car. The 2 men pushed him back inside his car and were fighting with him, attempting to get his gun from him. Now, that's what I heard on the satellite radio when this initially broke. Once riots began happening, all that disappeared. You never heard that again. And I never heard it in the mainstream media, with the exception of Fox News. Now, the other thing is I'd like to take a little bit of a look at the witnesses that were on this. One witness was the cousin of the deceased. The other witness knew the deceased. I would say they have a little bit of a case to make up a story here. I heard once in a broadcast on satellite radio, and then never again, that the 2 witnesses were known to the decedent. That includes listening to what I would call fairly reliable news sources, such as Fox News and BBC America. Now, in both stories, I think everyone involved would have been much better served by a reporting of the facts and a plea to allow a true investigation to reveal the facts in the case. Unfortunately, we didn't get either of those. I haven't heard any reports of fatalities in the Ferguson area, and that's a good thing. But what I have seen is a display of militarized police force that is very good at escalating the situation, and a community that has been whipped into a frenzy, at least in part, due to inaccurate reporting. Now, where I'm going with both of these stories is this. Please be careful where you get your news. Look for multiple sources and look for inconsistencies. I'm sure that back in the days of Walter Cronkite, the tools were not available that we have now to do our own research and to find out things as quickly as we can. However, that is one of the blessings we do have now. I can state, as the owner and executive producer of this podcast, we do make every effort to make sure the news we present to you is accurate. I'm very appreciative of all of you who listen to us for the news and commentary. I promise you we're going to continue to do our best to get you the best information we can. And we do appreciate your help sending us the links and opinions in email. I know we're not going to be falling prey to the get the story quick to the listeners syndrome that seems to have fallen on almost all the mainstream media. So, commentary, anybody?
Well, I would agree with you, especially with the mainstream media. We tend to watch ABC News because that's who our local affiliate is, and we just kind of go on from the local news into the national news. And every time I heard the reporter for ABC News, who's out in Ferguson, Steve Osunsami, talking about it, he referred to the young man who was shot as being gunned down by the officer in question. That is a loaded. He didn't say shot. He was gunned down, which is an editorial comment in and of itself.
Right.
Do I think? I look at what's happening on the ground, and for people who don't know, Ferguson is just a northern part of St. Louis County. It's St. Louis, Missouri.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the county, so it's what people call North County. You've got a situation where you've had the demographics of the town changing over time. The cops, when they were hired, it was primarily a Caucasian town. Now it's gone to majority black, but the cops are still white. The people in town are, for the most part, black. It's just a powder keg, and reporting does not help it. So,
well, and one thing I'd like to point out is that we've discussed from time to time on the show the militarization of the police, and that is front and center here. Holy cow! You've got regular police force out there in khakis, not even khakis, in camo, and in carrying the, I don't know if they're M16s or AR-15s. I haven't heard automatic gunfire in any of the news that I've been able to listen to, but the pictures I've seen, and I gotta admit, I listen to news. I don't watch a lot of news. The news I get is either audio or off the internet. So the video I've seen has been a lot of rioting, but the police I've seen, man, that's a full military regalia right there.
They look pretty plated up.
Yeah, they do.
I guess I can only amplify what you said. Journalists are selling a product. It isn't news. Their product is advertisers. They sell you a headline to get you to watch their advertisements. That's the business. And it's not a very charitable description, but journalists are to blame. It seems that some of them will say anything, like they remind me of the old boardwalk hawker. Step right up this way, see the impossible, right? They don't care. Once they've got your nickel and you're inside, they don't really care. It was impossible. The impossible thing was that they were telling you the truth. Another thing that you brought up, and someone phrased it to me this way. I think saying militarized police is sort of the wrong question. We have armed civilians who have a badge and disarmed civilians who don't wear one. Because neither of them are military. Neither of them are forces you turn loose on the enemy to kill people and take ground. That's the military's job. That's what they're trained for. That's not how we should be training our police.
Yeah.
If I can interject, well, not
Please.
interject, but contribute.
Please.
Yeah, when I was watching the footage of the stuff going on in Ferguson, not to plug my own show, but I had a friend who just came back from active duty, and I had interviewed him, and he's my friend. I talk to him for the show, and I talk to him one-on-one all the time, and he was an infantryman in Afghanistan, and the loadout that he explains and shows me in footage from him while he was deployed, his loadout did not even equate to what some of these guys are carrying. And that's
Meaning,
the United
if I
States
could,
of America, and he's over in Afghanistan. And I
if
feel
I
like
could,
there's... Go ahead, Paul.
just let me jump in quick. I just want to make sure we're clear on this. You're saying that the police in Ferguson had more equipment than the police in Afghanistan, or than the military in Afghanistan.
It would appear to be so. When you're talking about the type of people who they are trying to control, that is, their American civilians, versus who we're going up against in Afghanistan. I mean, you have armored vehicles in Ferguson. You have these, each and every one of those of those. I'm already confusing the words. Each one of those law enforcement officers had an M16 or an AR with a sidearm, with multiple magazines strapped to their chest, with strobe lights, flashbangs, tear gas, and those big subwoofer things. And I can see two sides of it, where every time something like this happens, and I don't see the connection between an 18-year-old African American getting shot and killed, though he's unarmed. I don't see the connection between that and I need a television and rims out of this tire store. I don't see the connection, but every time that these things seem to get amplified through the media and people start getting wind of it, and all this stuff starts happening, I understand the need to show the show of force in order to quell this whole thing. But if you understand the basics of population control, or if you read any type of book on strategy that involves warfare, you know that you have this thing where the shock and awe is going to cause either a population to flee, or it's going to cause them to fight back. We've seen day after day after day how these people are reacting. And hours before we came on this show, the news broke that the governor is declaring a state of emergency and putting a curfew in place. So it seems like all of these things that are happening over and over again and progressing, it seems like it's escalating the issue. And while I understand you need to have people there and they need to be controlling everything, I don't see how the American civilian is more of a threat, or appears to be more of a threat to the nation than, say, a group like ISIS or the people who are at war within Afghanistan.
Kyle, can I toss something in? I'm taking two turns here.
By all means.
It's a tragedy this man died. We don't know enough to know culpability. How did his actions contribute to his own death, or was he innocent, or is it a gray area where he was partially innocent, partially guilty, and there is fault on both sides? We don't know yet. But I did read something that put it, I thought, in perspective. This man's death is a tragedy. There were, 60-plus deaths in Chicago last week, most of them black. Any rioting, any outrage, any calls for changing of the police force in Chicago or the resignation of the mayor? No. We get crickets for that. Interesting. A double standard if we're out to look at violence on our streets and saving lives.
Right. There's this big issue of a divided nation, and the more and more that things like this happen, or it seems like every social issue that comes up, I used to think a divided nation as north and south. We have quadrants of divisions throughout this nation. And now you'll have the president, who's the next state over from me and on vacation, and the attorney general, who is now going to step in and wants to investigate these issues. I mean, why? Like you just said, this happens in in the president's own hometown, and
Right.
we can't even get documentation. They can't even keep track of emails, and not to get into that, but they can't even keep track of emails, or they don't want to contribute in investigating Fast and Furious and all those other types of things. It's these smaller issues that I don't I don't understand how that is going to help unify the country.
Yeah, well, excuse me. Without commenting on the actual problem, I just want to amplify what Paul was saying regarding the media, and I think it's important that we go out of our way to support the media outlets that do go out of their way to report just the facts, whether it's through making sure that their advertisers know that you got there because of that site, or the Truth About Guns, for example. If you believe in what they say, they have a donate page where you can make donations to them to keep them active and alive. Those kind of things. Just whatever it is, whatever outlet where you get your news, where you really believe that they just speak the facts, to make sure you support them to keep them going.
If I could, I want to. There's a couple things I want to do. First of all, I'm gonna mix up we've got a story coming up later that's directly related. I want to go ahead and jump to that story right now. Later in the show notes, we have that there were riots, of course, in Ferguson, Missouri, after a teenager was shot by a policeman. There was also looting and buildings burned to the ground. After that, firearms sales in local gun shops increased 5 to 10-fold. Local citizens became concerned for their own safety when local convenience stores were burned down. Citizens are buying everything from handguns to rifles to shotguns. People who already own firearms were back to buy ammunition. Customers who normally save up and pay with cash were putting purchases on their credit cards. One gun store owner put it this way: the good news is that people are taking personal responsibility for their own well-being. Citizens are admitting that even the best law enforcement can't be everywhere for everybody. It's also sad that we need to protect ourselves from our neighbors. I think that's that's a given, don't you think, guys?
Yeah, I think people are trying to protect themselves. And I read a number of those stories from St. Louis, and people were, what I found kind of humorous in a way, in a sad sort of way, is that in addition to shotguns and pistols, they were buying AR-15s. And it was for, quote, home defense. In a story we reported earlier, either last show or the show before that, a judge in Maryland, federal judge, Catherine Blake, said AR-15s have no use for home defense. And my response is, could these people in St. Louis and in Missouri know something that she doesn't? Now, that would be an editorial comment.
Yeah. Not only that, the .223 round is one round that is really good in not over-penetrating. It will not go through multiple drywall walls because once it strikes, it tumbles. And 9mm, yep, boom, right through. 357, bang, right through. 223
Slugs?
rifle round, not so much. Yeah, slugs. What wall?
Wall? You said wall? What is this
exactly.
wall of which you speak?
Exactly. So yeah, another, again, be careful where you get your news, and be selective in what you consume. Now, one other thing, my beautiful wife just sent me a link, and this comes off Clash Daily. Michael Brown case suddenly blows wide open, a likely slam dunk in favor of police. I'm just going to read the beginning of this right off their website, and I'll make sure I get the link in the show notes. Breaking new revelations in the controversy over police shooting of an 18-year-old Michael Brown have not only changed the narrative completely, they probably guarantee the police officer in question will be exonerated. If not for new video evidence showing a person who has been positively identified as Brown committing strong-arm robbery nearby at the same store which was looted and burned in the aftermath of his death. And just prior to the shooting incident, the officer might have been railroaded, as George Zimmerman nearly was last year, and falsely convicted of various very serious crime. I had not seen the video. I've got it muted, and I ran it through. Yeah, gentle giant, my hairy backside. No, wow. And it's a lot longer article. I've been kind of scanning it as we've been going through this. But, you know, one other thing, and this is not politically correct, but when the Trayvon Martin thing happened, it was often said that Trayvon could have been my son. Well, you know, Mr. President, Michael Brown could have been your son as well. And take a look at that video, Mr. President, before you act, please. So we are way long. We're 23 minutes into a 15-minute segment. So let's go ahead and we're going to jump aside. We got a lot of other news to come up, and we will be right back right after this. Good friggin' segment, guys.
Here, here.
Is Scott listening on YouTube?
Who?
One of our listeners.
Oh.
See, Chem Trucker or Mr. Fats? Let me go check.
What's that like? Having listeners.
Give me about 2 minutes.
Come on,
I'll
man.
be right back.
Yeah. We're not huge. We've got some listeners.
I had a revelation that I had one listener, which was cool.
A listener.
Yeah.
Are you checking your Stitcher? Because that's how I listen, man. Check your Stitcher stats. Stitcher stats.
Oh, actually, how do you do that?
I get it off the Stitcher Partner Portal. I've got it bookmarked.
Stitcher Partner Portal.
Yeah, when they brought you onto Stitcher, they sent you an email with a link to the Partner Portal.
Oh yeah, that's what that was. Crap username.
Go partners.stitcher.com/home.php.
I'm just reading this article that came up today, I think. Yeah. The police stood down, the state police withdrew, and there's more looting tonight in Ferguson. A lot of store owners are now standing in front of their shops to keep them from being looted.
Good. Saying the police are withdrawing from the fire zone for their own safety, a la Los Angeles.
No, I think they were asked to stand down. And the state police, last night, not tonight, and it's nearly night now in Ferguson. The state police came in, and they were dispersed rather than forming an armed line. They were dispersed in amongst the crowd. Things were peaceful. Evidently, without a heavy police presence at night, some people decide to use that opportunity just to loot. And there's a larger armed presence now in Ferguson as store owners defend their stores.
See, if all store owners, like you said, the sale of firearms is on the rise. I mean, if store owners could stand outside of their stores with, I don't even care if it's a single shot shotgun.
Yeah. No.
That's a deterrent, and you can keep yours thinking you can be as high speed as Flash Gordon with all your gear. You know, then there's really no need for you. If every single business owner was armed and was present in front of their store, that's my opinion.
They will be. They'll be there tonight. They'll be there from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd heard that there's a big Cabela's nearby. A few days ago, they They actually removed all the pistols and put them in the safe during the day even,
Right.
so that people couldn't break in and steal them.
Okay.
Rob, Mr. Fats has been commenting on YouTube, and Mr. Fats, by the way, hey, and he says yes, he's listening, and by the way, he sure does miss the live Wednesday show.
Okay. Hey, Scott. I didn't see him there when I was looking at comments. Huh. There they are. I had to reload it. Thank you.
All right. Have we got? And I've been busy doing a whole bunch of other things. We have. Yep. Everything's been rearranged in the show notes. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Did you guys assign me to any of them, or can I just comment? Oh, yeah, I do have one down here.
I put you in the rotation. I left Kyle out, but
Oh, that's a good story too. Oh, and I get to talk about my Vikings. Cool.
yeah, I just found that 5 minutes ago.
Cool.
Oh.
And I'm gonna ride on Bob Maine's Packers.
I guess you don't care about my Panthers.
Yeah, I don't like or dislike the Panthers. I have two teams in the NFL: the Vikings and whoever is playing the Packers.
Mm.
Not the Patriots.
Yeah, like I said, give or take. And Tom Brady, man, probably one of, if not the most incredible quarterbacks to play the game. Love watching the guy play, but whether they win or lose doesn't matter to me. I'll watch them because they're entertaining, but I don't root or not root for them.
Here we are in the polite end zone, waiting for the show to start.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring us back since I have the first story?
Sure.
Let me get the chips and pizza since we're going to talk about sports for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a nap.
Does this 67 people belong up, or is it here?
Hmm?
I thought somebody mentioned that in the last segment. No. 67 people shot in Chicago.
We can go ahead and do that.
I meant it to be there. I just wanted. We were talking about. I was comparing it.
Okay.
The relative rates of violence. So, no, don't move it.
Just an editing question. Go ahead,
Okay.
John. Sorry.
Okay, in 5. Hi, and welcome back to the continuation of the news segment of the Polite Society podcast. Police face a difficult job. That job may be impossible in some of our larger cities. A gang member described the streets of New York. Families are broken, working citizens and shopkeepers are harassed and disarmed by the city. When this gang member looks around, the only figures with any power are the armed drug gangs. The kids on the street have figured out that only fools obey the law. That attitude is the result of failed economic and social policies. That attitude will lead to high rates of violent crime, and it isn't a problem that law enforcement can fix.
When I read that article, I can relate to that kid's point of view. I see lots of small business owners leaving California. My local government, it seems, is not out to help me, but to regulate and tax me. Well, add to that some political corruption. I can relate to this Doug's point of view.
And continuing on with this, in Washington, D.C., an off-duty detective was shot in an attempted hijacking. Another officer was shot during the search for suspects. The municipal policy of disarming the citizens without a badge means criminals never fear their victims, even if their victims are off-duty police. 67 people were shot this week in Chicago. New York City has stopped posting statistics on its shootings and murders.
Is that the most transparent administration on the East Coast that refuses to put up statistics?
That would be the one that formerly
Mayor
was
Bloomberg.
Mayor Bloomberg, and now
One
taken
thing-
over by somebody who's one step removed from being a Sandinista.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to comment here in that I don't want anybody to think we're an anti-police program, because we're certainly not. They have an extremely difficult job. As a matter of fact, Dick Heller, I want everybody to remember it, and maybe if you don't know, this would be a good time to point out. Dick Heller, in the of Heller versus D.C., the first case to go before the Supreme Court that got started us on the route to getting our rights back. Dick Heller was a armed security guard, and his job was to protect the Supreme Court. Now, he was allowed to be armed while he was at work protecting the Supremes, but then when he went to go home, he had to go visit the armory, turn in his gun, and go home through the bad streets of D.C. The police, by and large, are great people doing a great job, and some of them are among the leading fighters for our rights. Hats off. If you wear a badge, hats off to you, man, especially in these big cities.
Absolutely.
I just want their job to be one that has the chance of success. I think some politicians have made it an impossible job.
Totally agree. Gary, you're up to the next one, man.
Right on. Our next story is about Mario Alejandro, 33, of Woodbridge, New Jersey. He's a Marine. He served in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Last week, he wore a T-shirt saying, "Keep calm and return fire." Above the lettering was a modern rifle colored in red, white, and blue. Mr. Alejandro was stopped by a security guard at Six Flags Amusement Park because of his shirt. The guard asked him to remove his shirt or buy a shirt and put it on to cover his T-shirt. Mr. Alejandro refused the request. The guard checked in with park management and then insisted Mr. Alejandro leave the park. Alejandro said no veteran deserves the same treatment he encountered. He's quoted as saying, "I fought for this country. I laid in a hole for 36 hours with no sleep and had friends die for this country. And so the people here could have the freedom to do the things like visit amusement parks. So when they told me that I couldn't come in there with my family because of my shirt, a patriotic shirt, it hurt a lot. No other veteran should ever have to experience that. Six Flag Entertainment operates 17 amusement parks. You can contact them here for the link in our show notes."
Yeah, I'm not going to be going to a Six Flags anytime soon. I don't know about anybody else.
Given all the possible shirts and sayings that enter Six Flags, this is where they decided to go to war?
Yeah.
That sounds
You
ridiculous.
know, and there's a Six Flags right up near Gun Rights Policy Conference next month. Gee, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people making the trip.
The next news item is that these words, common sense gun control, well, they do not mean what you think they mean. Our example of the day is from Representative Gabby Giffords. She proposed a 5-step plan to stop gun violence. Here are a few of her ideas. Idea 2 was to authorize law enforcement to remove access to guns with court oversight. The owners of guns would, quote, only get them back once he or she was, again in quotes, no longer a danger to themselves or others. Now, I've met a number of law enforcement officers that said, of course I'm a danger to myself and others. That's why I'm here. Someone needs to fear what I might do or I couldn't do my job. Gifford's other idea. We're including colleges and universities to report violent or suicidal people to a court or administering agency. These people would also have their firearms confiscated, but, again, quote, could regain firearms access after a certain period of time. Idea 4, allow courts to issue gun violence restraining orders. Those result in temporary firearms gun confiscation. Idea 5, temporary ban those who have been involuntarily hospitalized from purchasing or possessing firearms. What's conspicuously absent? I did not hear Giffords mention mandatory reporting of the mentally ill by the county and state to the federal NICS system. According to Giffords, common sense gun control means confiscation. What's interesting is that, given the way most elected legislators act, there are questions about disarming them for mental illness.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't see her idea coming up with the quote idea of ban those who've been involuntarily hospitalized and purchasing or possessing firearms as some sort of new idea. I mean, if you look at the Form 4273, it asks, have you been involuntarily committed for mental illness? Or something
There was
to that effect.
a guy in California who had that whole system go terribly wrong. He was involved in an accident, put on some very powerful painkillers. Anybody that they take off of those painkillers, they give, it's part of the withdrawal process, they give them psychological counseling. He was hospitalized and given psychological counseling. They then reported him to the county, who reported him to the state, who took away all of his firearms. It met the letter of the law, but not the intent.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That goes right back to the story that I reported about a month ago. The guy here in Illinois who had a horrible case of food poisoning.
Oh, that's right.
Intubated.
He was another one.
They had to be intubated. If you're intubated, you have to be restrained because they don't want you to accidentally pull the tube out of your throat and hurt yourself. And hospital policy, when you're restrained, you have a mandatory meeting with a psychologist. That case is still ongoing. They had the first court date was last week, and he's fighting, but so far no new news on that.
The mental health thing is, when these people try to put in these mental health stipulations into the law, when you're going back for your appeal process, the problem is your records are always going to say you had a bout of depression. Your records are never going to say that you're completely cured of depression. It's going to say that you're in remission. So the argument that they'll use is, well, it can be reoccurring. I mean, like you said about you having to be in a straitjacket and having to go through some sort of, or to be restrained rather, and have to go through some sort of psychological examination. Nobody, who's to say that that record isn't going to be struck? You would probably have to go to court to get it completely wiped out of your records.
If it even could be done then.
Yeah.
And what it will also do, a lot of this mental health issues will prevent people who need help from going and seeking that help.
Yep.
Whether they're veterans, whether they're just you and me, we're going to say, I don't want to get in the system, I don't want a record, I don't want to lose my rights.
100%, John. Ben Branham had a podcast on that, about he was telling his buddies who were struggling that had come back, and he was telling them, find the cash. Do not go through the system. Excuse me. To get the counseling that you need. I know you need the counseling, but try not to get in the system, because then it's all bad.
Mm-hmm.
I remember listening to that one, yeah.
That's nuts. What a profound political failure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next story, and that says, any of us with children know that kids take better care of their own toys than they do of other children's toys. Well, it looks like the police in Des Plaines, Illinois, have lost some of the AR-style rifles they were given from the Defense Department. The Des Plaines Police Department could be facing a federal investigation into the disappearance of 2 semi-automatic rifles. Police Chief William Kushner admitted he doesn't know where the 2 M16A1 rifles went. The weapons were given to the department in 2002 as part of a federal program to equip law enforcement agencies with military surplus weapons and to help combat terrorism and drugs. An internal audit required by the Defense Department failed to locate the 2 rifles earlier this year. Chief Kushner, who took over as chief 2 years ago, said poor bookkeeping and widespread access to the armory are to blame for the gun's disappearance. He expected a closer look at his records and procedures from the Law Enforcement Support Office and Defense Logistics Agency, which managed the surplus property program.
Paul, if those were actually M16A1s, they were not semi-automatic.
Yeah, they're the select fire if they're true M16A1s. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the other day I was driving home from work and I stopped at a gas station to get some smokes, and I park my car, I walk in, get my cigarettes, I go back out, and I'm walking to my car, and there's a Massachusetts state trooper walking towards me. So I hold open the door. He's kind of an older gentleman, but you know, hey, if he can make his quals, you know, props to him. I'm walking, and he had an SUV, a marked SUV parked right next to my car, and as I'm walking towards my car, his SUV was running with the window down, and you can't help but notice the rifle that's right there hanging inside the truck. All you needed was a pair of bolt cutters, which I happen to carry with me in my trunk. And it's like, dude, you left the vehicle running and the window open. Like,
well, not only that, you don't even need that. You just need, honestly, you need to just step inside the car and drive away. Then you got all kinds of time to do whatever you want to do.
Exactly. I could have gotten home in like 5 minutes.
Or faster if you put the sirens on.
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, our next story comes from Michigan. 2 bills advanced in the Michigan Senate that advance the right of self-defense. Senate Bill 977 passed in the state Senate and helps active duty military maintain their Michigan concealed pistol license. Many active duty Michigan citizens were losing their CPL because they could not apply for renewals in person. The bill requires county clerks to accept applications and return renewals by first-class mail. That would allow deployed military personnel to carry off base if their duty station had reciprocity with Michigan. The next bill, SB 979, passed in the Senate Judiciary Committee by a 3-to-1 vote. The bill realigned Michigan's definition of quote-unquote firearm with the federal definition, such that firearm would be redefined to mean any weapon which is designed to or may be readily converted to expel a projectile by action of an explosive. SB 979 also creates a separate definition for air guns. It preempts local units of government from regulating air guns and spring guns on private property when authorization is given by the owner and the possessor takes precautionary measures to ensure that the projectile remains within the bounds of the property. It looks like both bills will be taken up when the legislature reconvenes next month.
You know, in California, we have legislators. The state is encouraging local city councils to outlaw BB guns, to say, oh, BB guns have to be red, have to be green, have to be silver, and preferably a different color than anybody else has chosen. That means there won't be any. So this is good legislation. It stops the craziness. Probably worth calling their legislator's office if you live in or have relatives in Michigan.
Absolutely.
You know, I would like to make one minor point here. The gunpowder technically isn't an explosive.
Correct. It's a
Neither.
propellant.
Propellant. Good
Right.
point.
Neither.
Good point.
Just the same as gasoline. So,
To,
but yeah, that's
to a
nitpicky.
legislator it is.
Yeah.
Here's some more state news. Governor Deval Patrick signed bills into law that further regulate long guns in Massachusetts. The bills require Massachusetts citizens to first receive permission from their police chief before they may purchase a long gun. The bill requires that the chief appear in court to explain his denial of a firearms owner's identification card. Unfortunately, the bill does not establish what constitutes good cause for denial or good cause for acceptance. That means a potential gun owner must be willing to go to court to buy a gun. The governor invited gun control activists to the signing ceremony and did not invite groups like Massachusetts Gun Owners Action League.
Yep.
That tells you
that one.
what the governor thought the bill did.
You know, I'm kind of reminded of my friend Jay Grazio, who used to live in Massachusetts, who has the blog Marooned, used to refer to his former governor as Cadillac Deval.
Ah ha ha ha.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obama farts, Duvall gets bad breath.
Wow. And that one, I would say, that's going to be in court about yesterday, I think. So.
Yep.
All right. Moving down to Connecticut, State Senate Minority Leader John McKinney lost his bid for the Republican candidacy to face Democrat Governor Dan Malloy in November. Senator McKinney was one of the architects of Connecticut's restrictive 2013 gun laws. Excuse me. Businessman Tim Foley beat the incumbent senator by 11 percentage points. Foley publicly supported citizens' rights to bear arms. Tens of thousands of Connecticut gun owners helped support Foley and helped to get out the vote in this low turnout primary. They lifted Foley to victory in all but one Connecticut county.
You remember when we had, I forgot the name of the Connecticut gun owners group on. They said they were going to get political this election cycle, and sounds like they're keeping their word.
Yeah.
Did you guys on Wednesday's show? I just started editing it. Did you guys talk about the sheriff in Milwaukee?
Yes.
That
Oh,
won
yes.
that really spanked the anti-gun guy they were trying to primary him with.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
He spanked Bloomberg. Are you kidding?
Yes, he spanked. But last time he won by 5%. This year they spent, what was it, close to $600,000 trying to beat this guy in a $50,000 race, and he won by 4%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now if I'm remembering right, that sheriff is not facing a Republican challenger, so he basically won his race.
Yeah, he's in.
Yeah, pretty much in Wisconsin. Yeah. Milwaukee County. Yeah. It's not facing a challenge.
Cool. We got one more story here, and that's moving over to Minnesota. You might remember that last October, the National Football League issued a no guns policy at their events. The Dallas Cowboys immediately announced they would not obey that policy. Now a judge has struck down the policy for off-duty Minnesota police officers. Two police organizations challenged the rule, arguing that the NFL policy cannot preempt state law. Police groups argue that even off-duty officers need to be armed at Vikings games to protect themselves and the public. The judge's ruling applies only in Minnesota. And I would just like to comment, Bob Maine, your Packers still suck, man. Go Vikes.
Feel the love. But okay, why are citizens that wear badges at greater risk than citizens that don't wear badges?
Especially when they're plain clothes and going to the football game. I agree.
Well, just when you thought that police officers were allowed to carry everywhere, we get to talk about Dallas, Texas, and Rachel isn't here to defend them. Employees at the AMC 30 theaters in Mesquite saw a police officer's gun when the officer bent down to pick up a ticket he dropped. The officer showed his badge and offered to show his ID, but the theater manager asked him to leave. I think the real news story is about AMC theaters. It seems they have not learned a thing from the Aurora, Colorado murders in a gun-free zone in a theater.
Yeah, I would just like to comment here that, we've mentioned on our show several times that it is much less likely for a concealed carry permit holder to commit a crime than it is for a law enforcement officer. We are by far and away more law-abiding than the police are. However, the general public doesn't know that. The general public sees a policeman. If the policeman shows their badge, you're going to automatically think this is a law-abiding guy.
Yep.
For them to deny law-abiding people with badges is just insane. So let's go. And we're once again, big shock. We're running way long here. So let's go ahead and slip off to our gun quote here. This one is Sheriff Ben Johnson, Volusia County, Florida. In a perfect world, you wouldn't need guns. This, however, is not a perfect world. Hang on, everybody. We'll be right back with our interview segment right after this. Again, awesome segment, guys. I love the conversation, the back and forth.
I got to put a link to Kyle's show. Don't worry, won't hurt, Kyle. You won't feel a thing.
You will get with listeners.
Let me rub a little anesthesia on it.
Yeah. That feels good.
Okay, now don't rub it in public for a few hours.
Okay.
Have you, Kyle? Have you had other podcasters come on your show?
Yeah, Paul Carlson from Safety Solutions. I mean, I've had some interviews. I had Glenn Tate on. Yeah, I actually just got an email from him right before this, and I have an interview that I was actually in the process of editing today. I had interviewed Rich Graham from Trident Fitness. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he does a ton of work with law enforcement and former military people and civilians, and guy's got a wicked awesome training program, and it's pretty extensive. But
wait. Now you that should be in the interview. Darn it.
Yeah, remember that. We're going back to it. So.
Remember what?
Take your memory medication.
Okay. Where did I put it?
Okay, let's kind of fly off into this interview. Before we kick off and do this, is there anything? I should have asked this before we went on YouTube, but it's too late now. Is there anything we should not talk about?
With me?
Yeah.
No, nothing that I can think of. I'm pretty open spoken about everything.
All right. Is there anything you absolutely do want us to cover?
No, I mean whatever questions you guys have, anything that's anything that you are curious about as far as hand-to-hand combat, or the direction of Search and Assess podcast, anything pertaining to those are pretty decent topics.
Well, I want you to tell me the focus of the podcast, as soon as you come on. Okay?
Sure.
Actually, John, John, I'm sorry, Rob. Why don't you bring us in and why don't you fire right off into that?
Cool. 5. Hi, and welcome back. We have Kyle Bacon with us. He has the Search and Assess podcast. Kyle, give our listeners a feel of what they'll find on your podcast.
Well, hi, Rob, and thank you guys for having me on. The Search and Assess podcast it's a podcast, obviously. I do interviews, discuss things self-defense related, anything that's combatively related, gear related, things like that. And it's been around for, it's going to be coming up on about a year. But what gave birth to the podcast was an idea for a website that I had. This idea was, you have the Google search engine, and there are people all over the place who are looking for training. They're looking for handgun training, they're looking for hand-to-hand combat training, they're looking for survival training, they're looking for a shooting course that involves first aid. Where can I find training like that? I mean, you got forums all over the place. There's, in my neck of the woods, it's like Northeast Shooters. You got your local gun rights groups that have forums. Truth About Guns does a bunch of write-ups and stuff. But if you want to find out where is their training, I had built this, not me personally, my tech guy did, this website that I fill in any kind of school that there is and their web address, a link to their training, where they're located, and the types of training, the types of courses that they offer. So when you would go on to the website, you would type in your zip code, and right now you can filter in through specific disciplines, and you can find training, and it'll pop up with schools that have the training that you're looking for in your area. It's still kind of a work in process. We're actually moving the website to do something that's kind of been unheard of before. Pretty much it's going to be like the internet for anybody who loves self-defense. It's going to be tied into, like, say there's a particular manufacturer, like take Remington for example. I want to know what's going on in Remington. You click on Remington, it pops up with their YouTube feed, their Facebook feed, their Twitter feed, and anything that's going on in Remington lately, you have access to right there through the Search and Assess podcast. Anything that's going on in the realm of this type of gear, if you want to shop for this type of gear, there's a link to go and find, you want focus mitts for hand-to-hand combat training. There's a link for that. So it's a big idea for a website, and we're taking slow strides, but that's the main focus behind the website. But the podcast was kind of designed to help drive the website and to help promote some of these schools that I'm finding and that people are showing on YouTube and whatnot. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Kyle, let me contrast it. There are podcasts about handgun competition. That's different than self-defense. And it sounds like your emphasis is self-defense, of which armed self-defense is just one aspect. It
is. We were kind of discussing before the show that I live in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island is a very difficult state to. I actually saw a sign the other day that had "Welcome to Rhode Island," and on the bottom it said, "I know a guy." Pretty much that's how you get anywhere in the state of Rhode Island. You need to know somebody in order to get, say, a concealed carry permit. And it's both a may issue and a shall issue. It's a may issue through the Attorney General, and it's a shall issue with may issue implications through your local police chief, which is an entirely different thing. But even in states where you do have the right to carry a firearm concealed on your person, there are places where you're going to go where you don't have access, and you can't carry, whether legally or whether it's just not practical to carry a firearm. And what do you do in those types of situations? Well, if we're honest with ourselves, we carry a gun to protect ourselves and the ones who we love and care about around us. And what do you do in those circumstances where you can't? So just because you don't have a gun, that's simply a tool. And without that tool, you're still there. You're still the person operating that tool. You should have at least a basic fundamental understanding of how to handle yourself without said tool, whether it be a knife, whether it be what I don't remember what those small sticks were called, but
Nunchucks?
no, not
Kubaton.
nunchucks.
Kubaton.
What's that?
Oh,
Kubaton?
Kubaton. Yes.
Kubaton, yes. Whether it's that, whether it's mace, or if you like to hike and you like to carry a gun, but carrying a gun on your hip isn't really going to do you any use if you're lost. Not every problem can be solved by shooting it. So
Right.
so it's my idea that you don't restrict yourself as far as firearms training. You don't restrict yourself as far as how to carry, what type of gun to carry, what round you carry. Really, self-defense and the world of combat in and of itself, it doesn't focus on just the gun. So
Right.
that's kind of the perspective that I've taken.
Well, in fact, Kyle, I want to interrupt you before you say more, just because it's so fascinating. I've spoken to a number of police officers, and their attitude was, when things get physical, everybody.
Did we just lose Rob?
I think so. Rob, are you there?
No, it's gone.
He's gone.
He said I
Alright,
was
that sounds like-
fascinating.
Yeah, well, it sounded like
I just got friend zoned by Google Plus.
Oh wow! I wonder if the NSA was working on it on his connection there. Well, why don't we go ahead and while we're waiting for Rob to come back, why don't we? What I was looking mainly to do with you, because you'd been on the show before. There's Rob.
Hey.
Yeah, Rob. Why don't I'll go ahead and edit this. Rob, you want to just start your question from the beginning then, and the podcast listeners will think this never happened.
That's the beauty of us being recorded. Kyle, I'm sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. It's not your fault.
Kyle, I want to okay, I'll give you 5, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kyle, before you go on, that just brought a question to mind, and okay, this is more like a live interview than planned, so I'm jumping in. I've seen lots of police who said when they get physical with somebody and it's going to become hand-to-hand, everybody goes to the ground because they know how to manage it. That sort of, it's hard to deliver big blows and run from the ground. It's a no starting point where we're all equal. Well, very few of us get training in going to the ground and defending ourselves or fending off an aggressor, or fending off an aggressor from the ground and knowing, do I have a gun? When is it appropriate to reach for it? If everybody's down on hands and knees, what works and what doesn't? So it's not just the different disciplines, but sort of the blends of the disciplines of knowing how they work on the street. Is that the sort of thing I could find at your website?
Yes and no. I mean, that would probably be more geared toward the podcast. If an individual is looking for, I mean, I have a blog. I haven't really written on it lately, just because I'm focusing more on the podcast aspect. But if you listen to the show, you'll get my feelings on going to the ground. Generally speaking, from a self-defense standpoint, there's let's see, how do I word this? There's two approaches to this when you're talking about actual practical hand-to-hand combat out on the street. The first rule of thumb is martial arts are very old. They originate in probably as far back as like the 400s BC. I mean, and even before that, hand-to-hand combat was one of the first tools used in in warfare. And
If I could jump in, if I could jump in real quick, I would say that hand-to-hand combat, I would say, has been around since before we were on two legs. Look at a video of orangutans sometime.
well, yeah, yeah. That's all. That's all that you got. And generally, it was generally taught throughout, at least from my standpoint. I study five animal style kung fu. Kung fu is older than karate. It's older than all of the like the Okinawan and Japanese arts and everything. And even from my standpoint, there's two things when it comes to two individuals or one individual against multiple opponents. There's two principles: vertical and horizontal. Vertical is the guy left standing at the end of the day, and horizontal are the people who are on the ground defeated. And the concept behind this is, if you've gone to the ground, you've done something wrong. Jiu-jitsu by today's standards is not the jiu-jitsu of feudal Japan. Jiu-jitsu was developed by samurai. Samurai wore heavy armor. If you went to the ground doing jiu-jitsu as a samurai, you were probably getting stabbed. Going to the ground is also a very dangerous thing when you're thinking about, I'm in a bar. Who today gets into a fight and it's just a one-on-one type guy? There's pack mentalities out there. If I'm holding a guy on the ground in a rear naked choke, who's to say that his buddies aren't kicking in my teeth? So I personally would be very cautious when it comes to going to the ground. But your initial question of the types of styles, if you're looking for a type of martial art, and if you're going to study that type of martial art, I'm not gonna, and that's the only one you have access to, I'm not gonna discourage you from doing that. I wouldn't discourage you from doing that. But if you're familiar with the style, if you're looking through the search and assess itinerary of different types of hand-to-hand combats that are that I have in the search and assess database system of schools that offer different hand-to-hand combat styles, there's styles there that I had never heard of before, and I had done research on, and that is one way that you can kind of expand your knowledge on different types of hand-to-hand combat. But other than that, you got to tune into the show to find out my opinions on various martial arts, I guess.
Well, that's a tease and a reason for me to go listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Kyle, could I ask you a little bit about gun rights in Rhode Island versus gun rights in Massachusetts, which we just reported on, or in your neighboring state of Connecticut? How do you stand? You said that you have a may/shall issue system. How does it compare to the other two states, Massachusetts and Connecticut?
To the best of my knowledge, I believe both Mass and Connecticut are just may issues. I believe that, to the best of my knowledge, it is actually simpler to get a carry permit in Mass and in Connecticut than it is to get it in Rhode Island. I don't know why. I don't know if it has to do with the attorney generals. I don't know if it has to do with the police chiefs in Massachusetts that you have to go to for your paperwork and all that. But in Rhode Island, we have a very screwy system. May issue is exactly what it sounds like for the attorney general. You have to have a proper showing of need. I've attempted to go and get my concealed carry permit through the attorney general and was denied. I went in with my proper showing of need was, I'm an NRA instructor, I qualify people for their concealed carry permits, and I'm a CNR holder, and and I teach classes. I teach handgun safety classes, and I was denied. Now the shall issue portion of Rhode Island is your local police chief you can go to your local police chief and they'll give you an application, you fill it out, and you submit it. However, you still have to show a proper showing of need. Some of the police chiefs don't follow the law, and what I mean by that is in my town, the police chief requires you to have a psychological examination, which is not in Rhode Island law that it is required for me to get a psychological evaluation. As if that's not enough to boot, you go to the places where they tell you to go get this psych eval, and the test doesn't exist. So there's a lot of running around. There's a lot of issues that happen in Rhode Island where somebody attempts to go get their concealed carry permit through their police chief, and they'll just sue their police chief until they get their permit. Right now, there's a case in, I think it's in Bristol, Rhode Island, that actually just went to federal court over the police chief denying his permit. And it's off the grounds of self-defense as a proper showing of need. So that, depending on how that court case turns out, is going to have huge implications throughout the country, because if the judge rules in favor of the individual, and the individual does have legitimate reasons. He's like a security guard. He's got he's a CNR holder who's actively using his CNR, and I think he's also a landlord who carries a large amount of money. If the judge rules in his favor, it's my opinion that that's pretty much an end to May issue in the state of Rhode Island. But stupider things have been done. We have law in the state of Rhode Island that requires police chiefs to do one thing or another, and they still don't. So,
if I could jump in real quick, you said CNR a couple times. What is a CNR?
CNR is a Curios and Relics license that you get through the ATF.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if I could, then the question I have and I'm kind of dropping this on you. I didn't really, I honestly thought of the question just as we were beginning the interview, and so I didn't give you much time to prepare on this. But I would consider you an authority on self-defense, and I'm just wondering if Kyle Bacon were to have found himself tonight on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri. Obviously, one of your goals would let me ask you, what would your goal be to get out of there, and what would you want to keep in mind as you're starting to make your way out of there?
You're saying, like, theoretically, if I was a citizen of Ferguson?
No. Well, let's put it two different ways. Yes, number one, if you're a citizen. Number two, you happen to be a little bit lost driving in your car and you find yourself in Ferguson.
Well, I would say that obviously the best course of action is to try to avoid conflict. Just through my martial arts training in and of itself, it's always better to avoid than to strike, and it's always better to strike than to maim, and it's always better to maim than to kill. And from that standpoint, I would try to avoid just legal ramifications, and just everybody gets hit, and I don't feel like getting hit if I'm with somebody else. I don't want any danger to come to them. But if it's just me, I'm looking to leave, and I'm looking to find the best route out of that type of situation. I wouldn't go messing around with trying to quell the riots or anything. I wouldn't join the riots. I wouldn't I wouldn't get involved. It's a fight that's best left for the powers that be. I mean, whether or not I agree with their methods or not, it's not my place to try to reinstill order. It's my responsibility to myself to protect myself and to protect the people around me, my family.
Sure. One thing you started saying that, one thing that came to my mind is, I wish I could remember where I heard this quote, but I just can't. It is, I've never lost a fight I wasn't in.
Yeah. Sometimes living to fight another day isn't a bad thing. Another thing that I've kind of picked up on through my own hand-to-hand combat training and even in handgun training. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's always going to be somebody faster out there. There's always going to be somebody stronger, quicker, more accurate, and just there's thousands of variables, and you don't know exactly how you're going to react in that type of situation, in any type of scenario that you can think of. Now, do you train for variables? Of course you do, but you don't know. You really don't know. There's no way for me to prepare right now for if Ferguson were to show up in the town where I live in the state of Rhode Island. You know, there's no way to train for it. I can do things to prepare for it. I can do things that would be the best course of action. But you know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men. So that's kind of my approach to that whole thing.
All right, well, we are coming up on the end of the segment. We're gonna go ahead and jump off to break here, and we'll be right back right after this. Do you think we have one more segment in it, or should we go off to DGUs?
I'm thinking DGUs.
Okay. Let me save this. Yeah, Susan says we're already an hour and a half into the broadcast. Yeah, this isn't going to be a 1 hour show. The Wednesday show that I'm working on, they came in just under an hour.
We knew you were busy. We tried to keep it, tried to take it easy on you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Gary?
Gary, are you there?
Oh, his mic's muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Gary, I was going to give you one of the letters.
Email? Sure.
Yeah.
When we get into that.
The first one is really short. I'll take that and give you the next one that's longer.
And when we get into there, I'm gonna sideline off, and I'm gonna do something extremely dangerous. I'm gonna go to the Polite Society podcast Facebook page. So
you're gonna do what to it?
I'm gonna comment off our Facebook page. I'll just follow my lead when we get there. All right, let me go back to show notes. Okay. John, you got the first one. You want to bring us in again?
Sure. Are you ready?
Yep.
In 5. Hi, and welcome to the DGU segment of the Polite Society podcast. In our first DGU, a Jacksonville, Florida man and woman are in stable condition after a shootout with a home invader on Friday morning. A child in the house at the time was unharmed. The suspect, 21-year-old Travell Yates, however, is dead. The pair had just woken up when they heard a loud noise of someone breaking in at the back door, according to Jacksonville police. The 50-year-old man fought with Yates and was hit several times with a blunt object. He then got away and retrieved his own firearm and exchanged gunfire with the suspect. I presume it's his wife, but the 60-year-old woman also got a gun and shot at the suspect, who, when he arrived at the hospital, was declared dead. It goes back to something Paul was saying the other week. Do you carry in the house?
Well, I'm going to give them a pass because I think they were.
It was early morning.
Yeah, they could have been in bed, but yeah, and we'll be getting to that in the email segment of the show. So,
I hear Rachel, WWRS. What would Rachel say? Carry all the time, or guess lucky?
Yep. And I like the fact that both of them had firearms and both of them used them.
Yeah.
Now, I got to put in my own 2 cents here. You hear somebody breaking into your house, don't go hunting.
Yes.
Bunker in, call the police.
Yep.
We talk about systems in place for throwing the keys out the window for the police in case they can't get in. Different things like that. There's no reason to go looking around.
Just
Yeah,
because
bunker
you
in.
can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Bunker in, cover each other, and
get on the phone.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, get on the phone, get help there.
Police and the dog sort out the noises downstairs.
Yeah.
In our second DGU, Visalia man is dead after being shot by a woman inside her home. Visalia police said Thursday morning the shooting took place after the woman had been attacked by a man she knew. 46-year-old Albert Pena was declared dead at Kauai Delta Medical Center about an hour later. The woman, whose name was not released, was also injured and was taken to the hospital where she was treated and then released. She and Pena were in a relationship and had gotten into an altercation in which Pena assaulted her several times. While being assaulted, she retrieved the gun from inside her home and shot Pena several times. She was not arrested and cooperated with police. The case, according to police, appears to be self-defense. It will be forwarded to the Tulare County DA.
Well, this is California, so I wish her the best of luck, because any screwy things can happen in California, but I wish her the best, and I'm glad things turned out right for her.
Yeah.
And in Huntsville, Alabama, a home intruder must have thought the life of crime would be easy. However, when this person attempted to rob, responded with his own firearm early Sunday morning. The unidentified home invader beat feet. Not only did he flee, but he dropped both his gun and his wallet while he was exiting.
Should be easy to find him to return it.
I looked for a follow-up on that one, and I could not find it, but it was good.
Yeah, they can probably get DNA from the fecal matter that was...
From the pants that were left on the front yard. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this one here, this is the kind of DGU I really do like. 4 women were sitting outside a Tacoma, Washington wine bar. 51-year-old Robert Anthony Rashi brushed up against their table, and one of the women asked him to step back. Rashi, and I hope it doesn't really matter if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm sure he's not a listener. He flipped over their table and hit the woman in the mouth, knocking loose one of her teeth. A male customer saw the fight from inside the wine bar. He stepped outside and told Rashi to leave the woman alone. Rashi pulled out a 12-inch long knife and walked toward the man. An employee of the wine bar saw the group frozen in place, facing Rashi. Rashi held the knife in a fighting stance. The employee pulled his concealed handgun and then ordered Rashi to drop the knife and lie on the ground. Police found Rashi held at gunpoint when they arrived. He was charged with 2 counts of second-degree assault, 1 count of third-degree malicious mischief.
This sounds like
very cool.
This sounds like Rochambeau.
Okay.
Wine glass beats empty hand. Knife beats wine glass. Glock beats knife.
Yeah.
Sounds like a restaurant with a good attitude towards concealed carry holders.
There you go.
Absolutely. They were lucky Rashi was just a crazy amateur. A trained professional with a knife could have cut all of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I bet they're all inside 21 feet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, like to remind everybody that we have links to each of our news and DGU articles at politesocietypodcast.com if you want to look them up yourself or if you want to share them with a friend. Hang on, everybody. Tips and tricks up right after this. Okay, let me save it. Okay, Rob, you want to bring us back?
Yeah, but I have to let you know something. I have to be really careful how I say tips up right after this, because you know what that's going to turn into.
Yep.
Y'all be careful out there. 5 seconds. Hi, and welcome back. This is our email discussion section. And we have some emails from listeners. One of them said, remember those I Am Trayvon t-shirts? You know what we need now? How about some t-shirts that say, I am Shanine? That's from Ken S. in Phoenix, in the free state of Arizona.
I like that idea. We should see if there are any out there. You know, we've got this. What do you call it? What is that, Susan? It's a cafe press, I think, right? Yep, I'm getting a nod from across the desk. We have a cafe press site where we can create T-shirts, and we did for a while, but we basically sold them to ourselves and not a whole lot of other people. But we did have a few people buy them. But that might be an idea.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking. I see T-shirts and hoodies by Shanine, but none for Shanine.
Yeah. Somehow I think a hoodie with I Am Shanine on it would send a mixed signal.
Probably.
Yep.
On the other hand, you know, by in a month at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, they could be there.
You know, they could. They could.
I'll
I
go
wonder if
push
she's
that.
going to be there.
Yeah, while she's still on trial.
I don't think she's in jail right now. I think she's out on bond, isn't she?
Yeah, I would just be, if I were her lawyer, everything you say can and will be used.
Yeah. Well, I hope Evan Knappin's there. I really do.
Yep.
I don't expect it, but I hope he is. Gary, I think you got the next email in.
This email is from TJ. It says, "Hey, Paul. Thanks for the talk on the show. I guess I worded my last sentence wrong. It's not necessarily that I think we shouldn't have the two parties that we do. I just hate that for the most part we are forced to be in one or the other because, as you mentioned, it's really the only way to make change. It's just a conundrum when you have to vote for someone that disagrees with something you are for, based on the fact that they are for 80% of the rest of your views, or you could vote for someone that agrees 100% with you. I know, not going to happen. But by doing that, you are basically just wasting your votes. Thanks, Paul. TJ.
I want to jump in and say, TJ, I'm going to say this. You never, ever, ever waste your vote. Even if, I personally believe that the Republican Party is the best way to advance our freedoms right now. If at any point there were if for example the Tea Party were to break off and were to become an independent party, or if the Libertarian Party were to become viable and to put out viable candidates that aren't, I hate to say this, but I'm just gonna go straight up. I like Ron Paul. I like a lot of things he says, but when he gets in front of a camera, man, the guy just looks bat nuts. That the reason he couldn't be elected is because he has a public persona of craziness. And yeah, if his son were to run in an independent libertarian party, man, I'd be tempted to vote for him. But as it sits, even Rand Paul is a Republican. I don't know. I myself feel that the Republican Party is where we're going to make our biggest gains short term, and if Libertarian or Tea Party comes about and becomes a realistic party, man, I'll jump there. So, any other comments on that one, guys?
Nope.
Well, I think that it's necessary to vote your conscience. I think when a Ron Paul gets a 5% or a 10% of the vote, that says something to whoever does end up winning. That there's a bunch of people that believe in what he's saying, and it makes all of the politicians who actually win take notice of it.
Yeah.
I guess there is something I want to say. I think a frightening number of voters are uninformed. A frightening number of registered voters don't even bother to vote. I heard what I thought was a fascinating proposal that the ballot would include the candidate's name and maybe the proposition number, and that's all. No party, no description. Come informed or don't bother.
Well, you know, there are times I wish we would go back to a system where you had to be a landowner to vote.
I've thought that myself. I really have thought that myself.
Yeah. At least bring a signed high school diploma, please.
Or employment.
There you go.
I do want to jump off, and while this isn't technically email, we had a conversation on the last show, and it came out where Gary Harpster was saying, "I bet you most people don't carry inside the house," and I want to gloat a little bit because while I was still there, I went and made up. Let me go ahead and jump back. I know I'm doing something extremely dangerous. I am going to the Facebook page and taking a real big risk on getting distracted here. But I created a post, question referring to the show we just recorded. Do you carry on your body when you're at home? And of the 16 comments to that one thread, 12 of them do. One of the comments was me, and 2 of them didn't. So we are at a significant majority there. And then today, Trevor Furlot, who is, of course, with a couple of Canadian podcasts, but I listen to him most on Slamfire Radio. Let me go here to Trevor Furlot. I'd say probably 70-80 of CCW holders carry well at home. I know I would. I think he's trying to say 70-80%.
Yeah.
And then a couple comments on after that are Red Ranch, who is one of our loyal listeners and has been listening since day one. If you keep your gun in the safe, the only thing safe is the gun. Always carry, always. I only carry on days that end in Y. And and then Chaz Murray, of course, with the Road Gunner podcast, says hardcore gunners are probably biased in their assumptions. For instance, I assume everyone knows Canadians smell like maple syrup and urinate Tim Hortons coffee, 3 cream, 3 sugar. So, and he says, I carry at home, of course, but I'd be willing to bet fewer than 50% carry at home. Fewer than 4% of CCW holders even bother to carry outside the home, according to Tom Givens at Rangemaster.
Wow.
So I don't know Tom Givens. That seems extremely low to me. I think maybe 4% of the citizenry carry, but I don't think 4% of people that have that have permits.
I actually did some training with Tom oh gosh, going on 3 years ago at a blogger event in Tennessee, and
Mm-hmm.
Tom is from Memphis, and as I understand it, I think approximately 60 of his students, his concealed carry students, have actually gotten into gunfights.
Yep.
56 of them were unhurt.
Yep.
Those 56 carried, the other 4 did not. However, he does put on, was it the Polite Society
Tactical.
training?
Tactical.
Yeah, okay. His
Tactical
tactical
conference, yep.
conference. Yep.
Yep.
If he, I might actually believe his stats. I don't know.
I'd like to. I'll do some more research, but I think it's more likely it's 4% of the population, not 4% of people with CCWs. So, all right, let's and that's the email segment. Let's do our normal. Rob, do you have anything off your Slowfax blog you want to talk about?
I do. I wrote about the Maryland judge's decision that outlawed modern sporting rifles in Maryland. The judge says, well, basically modern rifles are too lethal for civilians, at least the civilians who don't wear a badge. She said those modern rifles are only used for assault and not for defense. Yet according to the judge, it's permissible for civilians with a badge to carry those same rifles that are only used for assault. Clearly the judge is wrong. The article is up at Amoland and it'll be up at my Slowfax blog.
I saw it. Very good article.
Thanks, Gary. Hey, I've got another reader. Who knew?
Oh, that's the first time I told you. I've seen lots of your stuff, though. You do write well.
Oh, okay, thanks.
You remind me when we're off air. I want to mention something to you, but let's go ahead and do this. We covered one of the bloggers that's on the show. John, do you have anything you want to talk about from your blog this week?
Not this week. I am actually going through the decision from the judge because I want to do a post about the use of junk science by the judge, because there was a lot of junk science quoted in there, and she refused to keep it out of the trial. So, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to read that one. Well, everybody, I think that does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society podcast. Until the midweek show, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
This show copyright 2014 by Paul Lathrop and Polite Society Podcast.
Awesome show, guys. Rob, I used to get emails from your blog whenever you posted. I'm going through emails from back in January and trying to clean up my email inbox. And I noticed I used to get emails from you all the time. Whenever you posted something new, I got an email. I don't get those anymore.
Oh, wow. I don't even know how to change that. Let me ask Ken. You know what? Let me take a note and then ask Ken Blanchard.
You can fix it. You fixed my mic problem.
That's because I knew who to ask, young grasshopper.
Kung Fu.
Well, that's your game.
Yep.
Okay, I'll thank you.
All right, well, I want to remind our live viewers, thank you for watching, and please, 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 please go ahead and go visit our sponsors, ABN Army Surplus, Firearms Safety Institute, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, and New Jersey Second Amendment Society. Anything to say before we take it off of YouTube? All
Thanks,
right.
guys, for having me on.
It's been great. It's to our listeners who emailed us. Thank you. It's great to hear from you.
You bet. I'm going to go ahead and take us off air. We'll see you all next weekend.